Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. Hopefully you guys can't hear the construction because it's very loud today. This is actually my third time filming this video because the first time my phone ran out of storage, and then the second time I filmed, my head, like the top of my head, was cut off on frame, so I have to refilm it. So as it was International Women's Day however many days ago now, and it's also Women's Month this month in the Philippines. I'm not sure if it is also Women's Month in other countries. Let me know in the comments down below. For this video, I wanted to share with you guys some of the books that I've read that are written by women. So I have 12 books I've listed here in my notebook to share with you guys. So let's just get started. So the first book that I would like to share is The Westing Game by Ellen Raskin. This is a mystery book. So this book is about the murder of Mr. Westing. So Mr. Westing is this super rich man, and he gets murdered. He then sort of like summons this group of people that has a connection to him, and his butler reads out the will. And the murderer is one of these people in this group that he has summoned. And they get grouped into pairs, which I thought was interesting, and they have to figure out who the murderer is, and whoever figures it out gets his entire fortune. I just really like this book. I love reading mystery, and it was just super fun trying to figure out who the culprit is. And things get pretty intense, especially when the pairs start to sort of like doubt each other and like they start pointing fingers at each other. It's very interesting, very fun to read, and yeah, I highly recommend this if you love reading mystery and like that kind of stuff. The next book is Wildcard by Rachel Lee. I always describe this book as being similar to Person of Interest, the TV show, just because the way that the book is written, it feels like every chapter is like an episode. Another similarity with that show is that it does deal with sort of like government secrets. It's very like action-packed as well, and there's just like a lot of that. Government secrets, secret organizations, and like all that good stuff that I find really interesting and I really enjoy. And as I mentioned in past videos, I love action in books because I do like watching action in movies and TV shows, so that's why I really enjoyed reading this. This was a super exciting book for me to read. I will also say for you to check out like content warnings or trigger warnings because there is gun violence in this book. There is like a war happening in a country in this book, so if you don't want to like read any of those scenes, then feel free to skip this book. The next book is The Manifesto on How to Be Interesting by Holly Bourne. This is a teen, like high school teen drama sort of book. So if you're into that, highly recommend this book. I always describe this book as like if Mean Girls and Read It and Weep had a baby, this book would be it, because the main character doesn't really like fit in her school, so she tries to get into like the popular crowd, and she does this experiment on how to be interesting, and she thinks that these popular kids are interesting, so she tries to get into the popular crowd, and she also has a blog where she writes about it. So that's where the Read It and Weep sort of comes into play in this. I will say to check out the content warnings and like trigger warnings in this book because there is mentions of self-harm, there is bullying, there is substance abuse, I believe, as well, and there is a very inappropriate teacher-student relationship in this book. So if you don't want to read about any of that, then please feel free to skip this book. The next book is, I think, the darkest book in this list. This is Smaller and Smaller Circles by F.H. Batacan. This is a crime fiction book. So this is set in the Philippines. It's about this priest who has like past experience in forensics, and there's basically this situation where there's like kids going missing in this specific area in Manila, and so he investigates it. As I've said, this is the darkest book in this list because it does talk about pedophilia, and there's also gore in this book, so if you don't want to read about that, then I completely understand if you would skip this book. So yeah, I had to put this book down so many times while I was reading it because I was just so uncomfortable because the things were just so disturbing and but yeah, I had to put this book down so many times, but I just kept on reading because I loved the writing of this book. That's the thing that made me stick around to continue reading. I really loved her writing. I think it's so good. I don't know what else to say about it, but yeah, I really just loved her writing, and I do recommend you read it. But again, I completely understand if you choose to skip this one. The next book is House of Furies by Madeline Rue. This one is a horror fantasy book. So this book is set in a completely other world, and it's about this girl who ends up at this house where apparently whoever ends up at the house is like an evil person, and just some like weird, strange, eerie things happen in that house. I don't think I can say more without spoiling anything, so just know that she ends up at that house and strange things happen. I would say that this leans more onto like fantasy than it does horror, but I mean, it does have horror in it. There is body horror, there is blood and gore, and some other things, so I can also understand if you completely skip this one as well. But to me, I don't think it's as dark as Smaller and Smaller Circles. Well, I don't know. I think it's because this is set in a fantasy world. It's not as disturbing, I think, for me, because Smaller and Smaller Circles is set in the Philippines. It is set in the real world. It hits very close to home, so that's why I think it was much more disturbing for me than House of Furies, where it is set in a fantasy world. I think that's just me, personally. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. The next book is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. I have like a bit of a love-hate relationship with this book. This book is about these 6 women, I believe. There's these 3 moms and their daughters. And this book is about like generational trauma. So in one chapter you would read about like the mom's past, and then the next chapter you would read about like the daughter's present life, and you can make connections with how what happened in the mom in the past is like sort of happening again in the daughter's present life. And yeah, that was just so interesting to read. And I say this is like a love-hate relationship because I can understand how important reading these things are, and like you can see and like make connections with that, and you can also sort of apply it to your own life, be reflective about it. The hate part of this is like there were just so many times where I would get triggered. Like I would get really, really mad because like, you know, things are done with like good intentions and stuff, but the way that they're executed is just like not good or like not effective. You know, that's like the frustrating part, is that, you know, things are done with good intentions, but the way that they're being communicated or that they're being executed is just not really effective, not really helpful the way that they probably think it is. But yeah, anyway, I still recommend this book. The next book is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala. This is another mystery book. This one is actually a very lighthearted mystery book, similar to, I believe, like The Westing Game. So this one is about this Filipina-American woman. She goes back to her hometown and she goes to her aunt's like restaurant. Someone gets murdered there. And so she's trying to like gather evidence to prove that her mom's not responsible for this person's death. I just really love this book because, again, I love mystery, but there's also so many mentions of like Filipino culture in it and Filipino food, which I don't really get to see that much in like international like books. So I really appreciated that. And also in the like physical book, there's recipes of the foods that they mentioned in the book. So I thought that was really cool. The next book is Bliss and Other Stories by Catherine Mansfield. This is a collection of short stories, and all of them are about women. I just thought that these were really interesting because each of the stories are very different from each other. They talk about how like women are being seen in society, how they are treated in society. And I just thought that that was so interesting to read about because these are set in like the early 1900s. So I just thought that that was really interesting to get to see, you know, how women were being seen and treated in society during that time. The next book is When I Bleed, Poems About Endometriosis by Maggie Bowyer. I still haven't figured out how to say her last name, I'm so sorry. The title is pretty self-explanatory. It's Poems About Endometriosis. I just really, really love this because I love how like raw and vulnerable she was when writing all of her poems, and I've gained a lot of insight about endometriosis from reading her poems. And I will also say to check out like content warnings and trigger warnings for this book because there is mentions, I think, of like self-harm. as well as medical trauma, and I think infertility as well. So if you don't want to read about those things, then feel free to skip this one. But I will say that this is a very, very informative read, and I highly recommend this book. It's so good. It's very emotional, and I just love the vulnerability and how raw she was in these poems. The next book is Home of Her Heart by Tara Goldstein. I still don't know how to pronounce her last name. I'm so sorry. So this book is about this girl who was adopted by this Canadian couple, and she's from, oh my goodness, I forgot where she's from, but she's from a country in South America. I don't remember which country it was. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking. She goes back to her home country because she is struggling with her identity, and she feels like she's lost her culture and her own language, and so she wants to go back to figure out her own self and figure out her own identity and sort of try to like retrieve back some of her own culture. And she also just wanted to learn about her like history with her family, like why she and her sister were orphans. So that's also something that she tries to figure out when she goes back to her home country. So yeah, I just really like this book. It gave me a new perspective about adoption. There are a lot more things to think about and to consider when adopting, especially if you are going to be adopting from a different country. So yeah, I highly recommend you go read this book. Okay, second to last book is Anne of Green Gables by Ella Montgomery. This is another sort of like adoption story. Anne gets adopted by this two siblings who live in Green Gables. This is, I think, a children's book, if I'm not mistaken. So it's very, very lighthearted and very refreshing to read. Yeah, it's a very, very lighthearted book. If you need like a breather from all of your like more dense books, I highly recommend you read this one. I highly recommend this book because of the visual imagery. Every time like Ellen Montgomery describes a certain place or describes a setting, it's so vivid, and you can actually like see it in your mind. It's just so beautiful. I really, really love it, and I highly recommend you read this book. And then the last book in this list is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. This was my favorite book when I was a kid. I would say it is still one of my favorite books to this day, just because it's so unique. Like, I've never read anything like this before, so this will always have a special place in my heart. So this book is about these three kids. So there is Meg and her little brother Charles Wallace and their friend Calvin. In this book, since this is book one of this quintet, this is a series with 5 books. In this book, they basically are trying to find their dad, because their dad apparently has gone missing for a while now, and nobody knows what is going on or where he is. So they're just like worried, and they want to find out where he is. So they go on this adventure with trying to basically look for him and try to bring him back home. I don't know how to describe this book. This is fantasy. There's just so many cool things that I had just like never read about before that were in this book, and it's just so cool. And if you love adventure, this book is definitely for you. I don't really know what to say, because I feel like if I like say more stuff, it will spoil a lot of things in the book, so I don't think I can really say much. But go check out like the blurb for this book. Check it out. I highly recommend this book. It's so cool. It's so unique, and there's like an enigmatic sort of quality to it, especially with some of the characters. They're just so mysterious and like mystical. I don't know how to like describe it, but just check it out. I highly recommend this book. So yeah, that is all of the books that I wanted to share with you guys. I hope you check them out, but I do understand if you don't check out some of the books, because they are quite heavy. They deal with a lot more heavier topics, and I completely understand if you skip those. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!